You're listening to a special bonus episode of The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to my round of 32 preview here on the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk. And is your bracket okay? Because mine isn't. My Sweet 16 is dead. Forget about it. No OSU. No Texas. No SDSU. No Winthrop. No UCSB. My Elite 8 is still intact, but my Sweet 16 is dead to the world. I mean, look, the one thing I'll say before I get going is don't begrudge the people who got this wrong. It's literally impossible to properly predict March Madness. You can do all the research you want, write down all the notes you want, talk to as many people as you want. At the end of the day, it's a crapshoot. March Madness boils down an over 20 game season into a single game elimination tournament where two opponents are facing each other that they've never seen before. No other sport does that. It's impossible to predict. That's why you'll never see a perfect bracket. Never. So don't get mad at me for getting some of this stuff wrong. Don't get mad at Doug Gottlieb or Seth Davis or Charles Barkley. At the end of the day, we're all doing our best. Did we make mistakes? Yeah. And we're going to continue to make mistakes. We're human. Because you have human beings judging other human beings. Inherently, you're going to get mistakes from that. So let's get right into the round of 32. Again, I'm going to go chronologically. The first game on the docket is Loyola of Chicago going up against Illinois. If Loyola is going to win this game, they've got to play through Cameron Krutwig more. Krutwig was an afterthought against Georgia Tech. He only took 6 shots. Marquise Kennedy took more shots than him. Now look, it worked. Guys like Lucas Williamson, Braden Norris, and Keith Clemens went off. But Krutwig is the best Rambler. He's got to show it if they want to shock the world again. I'm not saying they shocked the world by beating Georgia Tech, but we all know what they did in 2018. And Krutwig was there for that. He's got to be a big part of what the Ramblers do later today. As for Illinois, it's kind of obvious. They've got to play through Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn. They did it on Thursday. They utterly destroyed Drexel. Their defense was perfect. Their offense was perfect. I'd have liked them to have shot more threes, but Drexel was letting them penetrate, so that's okay. If you're given that lane, use it. Dosunmu and Coburn are better than Krutwig. There's no question about that. But I can make the argument that Trent Frazier and Adam Miller are also better than Krutwig. It's not easy to pick against Loyola, given what they did in 2018. But this was one of the few round of 32 matchups that I got right. I picked Illinois to be in the national title game, so I've got to go with the Illini. Moving on now to Wisconsin-Baylor. Another round of 32 matchup that I got right. If Wisconsin's gonna win, they've got to keep up the stifling defense. They made UNC look terrible. Outside of Armando Bacot, there wasn't a single Tar Heel that impressed me on Friday. They did a great job of contesting every shot, closing out, getting into the passing lanes. Guys like Nate Revers and Micah Potter had great defensive games. Demetric Trice and Brad Davison had great offensive games. It was a great, well-rounded game for the Badgers. They're going to need to do that again, specifically on defense. As for Baylor, the number one thing I would say to them is just keep doing what you're doing. Don't reinvent the wheel. You dominated Hartford on Friday. I understand it's Hartford. They should have beaten Hartford. But that was an incredibly impressive performance. You do get credit for beating the teams that you're supposed to beat. One seed or not. If Baylor sticks with what got them here in the first place, they will win. They're a better team than Wisconsin. They're a deeper team. They have the better coach in Scott Drew. This won't be the easiest game that Baylor's ever played. Obviously, it'll be harder than Hartford. Wisconsin's a million times better than them. Wisconsin's defense could frustrate Baylor. There's no question. But ultimately, I do think the Bears will win, much like I said they would in my bracket. Moving on now to Syracuse, West Virginia. If the Orange are going to pull off another upset, they've got to continue playing through Buddy Boeheim. Boeheim was unconscious on Friday. He looked like the second coming of Carmelo Anthony. I'm not kidding. The guy dropped 30 points, 11 for 15 from the field, 7 for 10 from beyond the arc. It may have been the best individual game of the whole round of 64. They need to keep him as the center point of the offense because, like I said before, I don't trust guys like Alan Griffin, Quincy Guerriere, and Marek Dolezaj. Let Boeheim continue to go off. As for the Mountaineers, they've got to clamp down on D. Morehead State was not bad. They put up 67 points. That's not bad. They were down by 7 at the half. Not bad. They shot 52% from the field and 53% from beyond the arc. They also out-rebounded the Mountaineers. They got more blocks. The Mountaineers' defense needs to clamp down. I know this isn't Press Virginia. This isn't as good a defensive team as Bob Huggins' teams have been in the past. But, given what Buddy Boeheim can do, if you don't clamp down, he may go off for 40. I mean, there is a way that Syracuse can win this game. But I think the Mountaineers have the better depth. Guys like Miles McBride, Derek Culver, Sean McNeil, Taz Sherman, and Jalen Bridges are better than the group that Syracuse is going to throw at them. I mean, I don't know where you put Boeheim in that group. He's probably better than Bridges. Maybe Culver. It's tough, but no one else on the Orange compares to those guys. Syracuse can win, there's no question, but I think Huggy Bear is going to have this team focused on defense. I've got to go with the Mountaineers. Moving on now to Texas Tech, Arkansas. If the Red Raiders are going to win this game and get one step closer towards duplicating their national title game appearance in the last March Madness, they've got to shut down Moses Moody. It's just that simple. We think of the Red Raiders as being this great defensive team, and they are in certain aspects, but in terms of perimeter defense, they're one of the worst teams in the nation. Opponents this year have hit 34.5% of their three-pointers. That is the 233rd best mark in the nation. In conference play, that number balloons to 38.3%. Moses Moody can have a field day in this game. You wouldn't know it from what happened in the game against Colgate, but Moody is a great three-point shooter. Texas needs to key in on him from the outset. Because if Moody gets hot, the Red Raiders have no chance. And that plays into my Razorbacks point. Who's going to step up from three? The way that Arkansas beat Colgate was on the interior. And that's okay. You can do that against Colgate. You can't do it against Texas Tech. Marcus Santos Silva isn't going to let you do that. So who's going to step up from three? Is it going to be J.D. Notte? He hit 3 of his 8 threes against Colgate. I'll take it. Is it going to be Jalen Tate? Justin Smith was the best Razorback on Friday. He's not going to be today. There's no way. It has to be Moody. Or if not him, Notte or Tate. The Razorbacks need to live and die from the three-point line. Now, they're not an awful three-point shooting team, but they're not a great three-point shooting team. But I think Moody can step up and be the guy to hit a bunch of threes and lead the Razorbacks to victory. I'm really high on him. I'm high on this Arkansas team, higher than most. I've got to go with Arkansas. Moving on now to Rutgers, Houston. And in all fairness to me, I was really close to picking the Scarlet Knights to beat Clemson. I told you I wasn't in love with the Tigers. They have a dreadful offense. You saw it. I just thought their defense would lead them to victory. It didn't. Give Rutgers credit. They played a good game. But I really don't see how they can beat this really, really good Cougars team. I mean, I'm really struggling to come up with anything. If Harper, Baker, Young, and McConnell go off again? No, because Houston's gonna put up more than 60 points. I got news for you. Quentin Grimes, Marcus Sasser, and Dejan Giroux is a better triumvirate than Harper, Young, and Baker. I really don't see how Rutgers can beat this team. I'm sorry. I didn't like them going into the tournament. For God's sake, they went 16-11 this year. They were 500 in conference play. They're not that good. They beat a decent Clemson team. Whoop-de-doo. You know, I don't want to rain on their parade or anything. Rutgers hasn't won a game in March Madness since 1983, when they beat Louisiana. But they're not that good. They're going to get their doors blown off against the Cougars. This is going to be a rout. It's not going to be close. You're going to be able to turn this game off very quickly. Moving on now to Oral Roberts versus Florida. And firstly, a tremendous congratulations goes to the Golden Eagles. No one outside of Oklahoma thought that they had any chance against the Buckeyes. I know I didn't. Come on, there's no way that this team out of the Summit League is going to beat this great Buckeyes team with E.J. Liddell, Dwayne Washington, and Justice Suing. There's no way. But Oral Roberts was poised from the outset. Their perimeter defense was fantastic. Except on the last shot in regulation, the Dwayne Washington 3. He should have hit that 3. But besides that, Oral Roberts' perimeter defense was perfect. I mean, there is a bigger story, though. The collapse of OSU. E.J. Liddell missing the front end of the 1-and-1? You can't do that. Probably the two best Buckeyes choking in the final minute of regulation? That's not going to work. Now, I obviously don't condone the death threats and the hateful messages that Liddell got. That is heinous. That is reprehensible. And the people who sent them should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But if you're a Buckeyes fan, you have a right to be upset. You were better than Oral Roberts. By a mile. And you lose to him. You turn the ball over 16 times. Oral Roberts had 10 steals. You know how many steals they get per game? 6.5. Terrible game by the Buckeyes. I mean, again, Great job by the Golden Eagles in seizing on it. Max Abmas and Kevin Obanor played every minute of that game, and they were sensational. RJ Glasper didn't play at all. I didn't know he was going to be out. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure I mentioned him in the Round of 64 preview. It's all the more impressive that Oral Roberts won. He was their third best player. He didn't play. The Golden Eagles played 4 players on Friday for more than 40 minutes. I don't know if I've ever seen that in a college basketball game. This is not a deep Golden Eagles team. But again, job well done by Abmas and Obanor. Not being fazed by the bright lights. Not caring that they were the massive underdogs. Great job by them. If they're going to make it to the Sweet 16, it's got to be Abmas and Obanor again. It's just that simple. One of them can't afford to have an off night. If they do, Oral Roberts is dead. As for the Gators, I'd like them to use their depth. Don't let Oral Roberts key in on anyone. Let Castleton, Lewis, Mann, Locke, and Appleby get the same number of shots just about. That's what they did against the Hokies, and it worked. If Oral Roberts is going to be so dependent on 2 guys, we're going to go the other way. We're going to make it so you don't know who to key in on. It's kind of tough to pick Oral Roberts to make it to the Sweet 16. Can lightning strike twice? That's the question. It's very tough to say that it will. I know it's March, but it's still really tough to say that. I mean, I got this matchup wrong. There's no question. I picked OSU versus Virginia Tech. You know what? I got this matchup wrong in my bracket anyway. So let's go big. Abmas and Obanor took down OSU. They can take down Florida. OSU is better than Florida. I'm going to do it. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little too much. But there's no better time to do it than in March. I'm going to go with Oral Roberts. Moving on now to North Texas versus Villanova. If the Mean Green are going to pull off the upset again, they've got to put their foot on the throat of their opponent when they have the opportunity to. They had Purdue down 8 at the half. They led that whole game. The only time that Purdue had a lead was when they were up 3-2. But Purdue came back and forced overtime. Now, granted, they looked gassed in overtime. They couldn't stop North Texas to save their lives in overtime. But I don't think that's a good formula for North Texas. Getting the lead and not being able to put them away. You don't want to have to go to overtime. If you have the opportunity to beat them, beat them. They didn't do that, and I don't like their chances against this really good Villanova team following that same, for lack of a better word, roadmap. I mean, now that Villanova has gotten past Winthrop, they're going to be a tough out. I understand that if Nova wins, they'll get the winner of Baylor, Wisconsin, which I think will be Baylor. Obviously, Baylor's a 1 seed, but I actually think Nova matches up pretty well with Baylor. Like, me picking Winthrop wasn't a dig at Nova. I like Nova. The Colin Gillespie injury did not slow them down. Jeremiah Robinson Earl stepped up, had a double-double. The guy's probably going to be a lottery pick. Justin Moore stepped up. Jermaine Samuel stepped up. Caleb Daniels stepped up. I'd have liked Cole Swider to have gotten a little more involved. But you know what? The Wildcats got the win. Nova's going to be a really tough out going forward. If they were matched up with anyone else, I'd have picked them to have advanced. I just liked Winthrop. Alright, I got them wrong. No question. Dreadful performances by Chandler Vaudrin and Charles Falden. I like Nova a lot. I think this is a really talented team. They have a great coach in Jay Wright. I've got to pick Villanova. Moving on now to Oregon State, Oklahoma State. I'm pretty sure that I said that the Beavers had no chance of winning this game. And I'm not being facetious. I honestly don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that's what I said. Hey, I got it wrong. Welcome to March. They beat a great Volunteers defense. They put up 70 on them. That's impressive. Tennessee only scored 19 points in the first half. Oregon State was the much better defense, obviously. But if you had told me going into that game that the Beavers were going to have the better defense, I'd have said you were nuts. Keep that up. That is how you're going to beat Oklahoma State. Because the Cowboys have a lot of guys that can kill you. Cade Cunningham, Avery Anderson, Caleb Boone, Isaac Likely, and Matthew Alexander Moncrief. I'll throw in Rondell Walker too. They've got to keep up their great defense if they want to pull off another upset. As for Oklahoma State, if they're going to win, I got to look to Cunningham again. You know, Liberty wasn't a great team. They were up at the half. They only lost by 9. I don't want to rain on their parade. They dominated the Atlantic Sun all year. But I did think Oklahoma State would win. When you're going up against an inferior team, a vastly inferior team, you can afford your star player to have an off night. Because you can expect your secondary pieces, like Anderson and Moncrief, to step up. I was not impressed with Cade Cunningham. He shot 3 for 14 from the field, 2 for 8 from beyond the arc. He turned the ball over 4 times. This was his moment to put a stranglehold on the first overall pick. He didn't do that. He has that opportunity again, but the jury's still out. Let's see Cunningham go off against a worse Oregon State defense. Liberty's defense is better than Oregon State's. There's no question about that. I don't care what happened on Friday. I do think Oklahoma State is the better team. They will be the last OSU standing. I'm picking the Cowboys. Moving on now to Monday's games. And I will start with Oregon versus Iowa. Obviously, the big story surrounding Oregon is that they didn't even need to play to get into the round of 32. VCU had a COVID outbreak. They were forced to withdraw from the tournament. By the time this was discovered, the field was locked. There was no way we could get a replacement team in. So, Oregon is the victor of the lowest scoring game in March Madness history. They won 1-0. That is how a college basketball forfeit is stylized. Make no mistake about it, this is the nightmare scenario for the NCAA. The one positive is that it happened in the round of 64. If it's going to happen, let it happen in the first round. Because at the end of the day, VCU didn't prove anything. It's not like they won the A-10. It's not like they were a first four team. They were an at-large bid. And I thought they were going to lose anyway. So, there are some positives there. But, there are a lot of questions that the NCAA needs to ask themselves. Why did this happen? Did someone affiliated with VCU do something stupid? Or do the protocols not work? Those questions need to be answered quickly, because you cannot have this during the Sweet 16. The Elite Eight. The Final Four. Hell, even the national title game. Can you imagine a national champion being crowned via forfeit? There's a lot we don't know about this situation. It's impossible for me to blame anyone because there are so many unknowns. What happened? Did someone violate one of the protocols? Do the protocols need to be ramped up? It's not like anyone posted a picture on Twitter of Mike Rhodes eating at St. Elmo's Steakhouse the night before the Rams were supposed to play. Is it possible that someone had the coronavirus going into Indianapolis, didn't do anything stupid, and it just lay dormant until yesterday? Yes. But the NCAA is playing with fire here. Realize, these teams are in Indianapolis. They're not in Disney, walled off from the rest of the world. It's very easy for one of them to slide down a fire escape and do something stupid. I'm not saying that's what happened, but the NCAA is playing with fire. They just got singed. This isn't the end of the world. It is the nightmare scenario, but it could have been worse. And again, I thought Oregon was going to win anyway. If it was a team like Baylor or Gonzaga, that would have been terrible, because you had a 16 team advancing that had no chance of winning. A 10 seed withdrawing so a 7 seed can advance, you can live with that. This could have been worse. That's what the NCAA needs to be thinking right now. This could have been worse. Yes, we need to review a lot of things, but we got a little lucky here. We just got singed. We didn't get third-degree burns. And I have Iowa winning the national title, so obviously I'm picking the Hawkeyes. Moving on now to Oklahoma Gonzaga. If Oklahoma's gonna win, they need Elijah Harkless to step up again. I've spoken about Elijah Harkless glowingly in the past. I love this kid. I think he's going to be a really good NBA player. He stepped up for Davion Harmon, took over his offensive output, and did it better than Harmon. Harkless had a double-double. 16 points, 10 rebounds. Harmon hasn't had a double-double all year. Yes, Reeves needs to keep doing his thing. Yes, Manek needs to keep doing his thing. And yeah, I'd like Umoja Gibson to be more of a factor. But I'm looking at Harkless, a guy who I think is going to be really good in the next level. Really good two-way player. Every time I watch him, I'm amazed. As for Gonzaga, they need to continue playing up tempo, keep making it rain offensively. Gonzaga's offense is so great that it doesn't even bother me that Andrew Nemhard and Jalen Suggs no-showed. Because they have guys like Corey Kispert, Drew Timme, Joel Ayayi, and Anton Watson that are capable of going off. Oklahoma is a good defensive team. They're not great, but they're not bad. But they're going to be no match for Gonzaga. This was another one of the few matchups that I nailed. I'm going to stick with it. Gonzaga's going to win. Moving on now to Abilene Christian versus UCLA. Remember when I said that a first four team usually wins? I was right about that. I just got the team wrong. And Abilene Christian knocking off Texas. Who on earth saw that coming? Unless you live in Abilene, there's no way you picked them to upset the Longhorns. But let's be honest. This wasn't as much a win for Abilene Christian as much as it was a loss for Texas. I don't want to rain on the Wildcats parade. Give them full credit. They beat a 3 seed. But Texas was dreadful. For starters, they only put up 52 points. I don't care that Abilene Christian has the 7th best defense in the nation in terms of points against per game. You're a 3 seed. You have offensive weapons galore. Andrew Jones, Matt Coleman, Courtney Ramey, Greg Brown, Jericho Sims, and Kai Jones. To score 52 points is inexcusable. And it's not like they shot the ball inefficiently. They just turned the ball over 22 times, which defies logic. And how on earth does Greg Brown, one of their best players, only play 6 minutes? Why is Brock Cunningham getting more minutes than him? Why is Jeez Febris getting more minutes than him? Shaka Smart has had some dreadful opening round losses with the Longhorns. In fact, their last 3 March Madness appearances, they've lost in the first round. In 2016, they lost to Northern Iowa after an improbable half-court heave. You really can't blame Texas for that. I get that. 2018, they were up by 14 on Nevada in the second half, only to choke that away and lose in overtime. This may be worse. You lose to Abilene Christian, a team in your own backyard. I don't know how far Abilene is from Austin, but it's in the same state. You can't lose to a team in the same state as you, especially if you're a 3 seed losing to a 14 seed. I don't want to hear that Matt Coleman didn't foul Joe Pleasant. He did. That's clearly a foul. The Kai Jones block was clean. The Matt Coleman hack? That's a textbook foul. And the cubes on Pleasant to drain both those free throws to give Abilene Christian the 1-point lead, which ultimately turned into the 1-point victory. You've got to tip your cap to him. Incredible job by Pleasant. Bad job by the Longhorns. It's time to consider whether Shaka Smart should be fired, because these are 3 really tough losses in the first round. And that's all he has to his name as Longhorns head coach. I'm not kidding. That's all he's done with them. They lure him away from VCU with a big money offer. He's done nothing there. 3 straight first-round upsets. Shaka Smart needs to go. He cannot coach on the big stage. Let him go to a smaller school, and he can go on his crazy runs. There is no question that UCLA is going to win. They are the better team, especially with Johnny Juzang not showing any ill effects from his injury. The guy dropped 27 on the Cougars. UCLA is going to win. There's no question about that. Abilene Christian's going to be run out of the building. Moving on now to Ohio versus Creighton. Ohio is the 4th 13 seed or worse to play in the round of 32 in this March Madness. This year marks the first time that 4 teams seeded 13 or worse have made the second round in a single March Madness. Thank you, SportsCenter. I retweeted that. It was funny, a lot of people were picking Ohio. It was a smart upset. It was smart to pick them. They matched up well with Virginia. I just didn't think the defending champs would go out in the first round. I guess I should have listened to the wisdom of the crowd. If Ohio's going to win, it's got to be because of their offense. Their defense won them the game against Virginia. No question about that. But the Bobcats aren't a good defensive team. Lightning isn't going to strike twice like that. They need Jason Preston, Dwight Wilson, Ben Vanderplas, Ben Roderick, and London McDay to all step up. Roderick, Vanderplas, and Preston did, but Wilson and McDay didn't. That's not going to work against this Creighton team that I am really high on. Alright, yes, I picked UCSB to win. And in all fairness to me, they only lost by 1. Alright, Christian Bishop had to hit some clutch free throws for Creighton to win. But I do like this Creighton team. I like Marcus Zagorowski. I like Denzel Mahoney. I like Mitch Ballock. In fact, Ballock and Damian Jefferson are my keys to this game for Creighton, and Ryan Kalkbrenner too. Get those guys going. 'Cause you narrowly beat the Gauchos. You were very close to losing that game. Ultimately, I do think those guys will show up. I do think Creighton is better than Ohio. I'm going to go with the Blue Jays. Moving on now to LSU versus Michigan. And I gotta tell you, I was really impressed by the Tigers. They played the game they needed to play if they were going to beat the Bonnies. I didn't think they would beat St. Bonaventure, but LSU played a textbook game. It was exactly what they needed to do. Push the pace, get Cameron Thomas involved. They had 3 players get double-doubles. Darius Days, Andre Hyatt, and Trendon Watford. Javonte Smart no-showed. It didn't matter. Great game for LSU. Really. They're going to need to duplicate that if they want to beat Michigan. But it's not going to happen. I do think this very underrated Wolverines defense will shut them down. Guys like Hunter Dickinson, Franz Wagner, and Eli Brooks, I think are going to be too much for LSU. You combine that with Isaiah Livers, Mike Smith, and Chwandy Brown's offensive output. I don't see how Michigan loses. I know that Brown no-showed against Texas Southern, but I don't see him doing that twice. Give me the Wolverines. Moving on now to Colorado versus FSU. And look, I knew that the Buffaloes would beat Georgetown. That was a very easy pick for me. A lot of people were picking Georgetown. I didn't understand it. I didn't think they'd shoot over 60% from the field and beyond the arc. The over-under on the game was 136.5. Colorado scored 96. They weren't that far off from the over-under by themselves. I mean, I guess the one thing I would say would be clamp down a little more on defense, because Georgetown did put up 73. They put up 50 in the second half. Maybe that's it. Keep your eye on the prize. Don't get complacent. I would say just be a little better defensively. As for FSU, I've got a weird one for you. I want them to play through 2 guys. That's it. Raekwon Gray and Balsa Koprivica. FSU was dreadful from beyond the arc against UNC Greensboro. In fact, they couldn't have been much worse. They were 0 for 9. It's clear to me that guys like Scotty Barnes and MJ Walker are just getting fazed by the bright lights. Gray and Koprivica aren't. I would use those other guys as decoys. Let Gray and Koprivica go off. I mean, Colorado had a tough time dealing with Qudus Wahab. He had a double-double, 20 points, 12 rebounds. Koprivic and Wahab are very similar players. But I really like this Colorado team. There is a way that FSU can win. There's no question. It wouldn't stun me if they won. And Colorado will cool off. There's no question. But I was really impressed with the Buffaloes throughout their conference tournament and against Georgetown. I gotta go with Colorado. Moving on now to Maryland versus Alabama. If the Terrapins are going to win, they've got to continue clamping down on D. The Huskies were lifeless the other day. I didn't see that coming. I really thought that James Buffknight would go off for more than he did. I thought that R.J. Cole would go off for more than he did. I definitely thought that Tyrese Martin would go off for more than he did. But Maryland shut them down constantly. The only thing I would say is just clean up your effort on the glass. UConn out-rebounded Maryland 39-27. In terms of offensive rebounds, Maryland had 3. UConn had 21. I mean, the reason UConn lost was that they couldn't get on a run. Maryland just kept clamping them down defensively. Give them credit. Mark Turgeon had his boys ready to play. But Alabama is a better offensive team than UConn. You can make the argument that Buffknight is better than Jaden Shackelford, Javon Quinterly, John Petty, and Herb Jones. And let's be honest, Iona almost knocked them off. They played the Crimson Tide close for a large portion of that game. It really wouldn't stun me if Maryland won. But I do think Alabama is the better team overall. I love Nate Oates. I think he's one of the best coaches in the nation. With Texas out of the way, their path to the Elite Eight just got a lot easier. They are by far and away the second best team in the East region. It's not even close. Roll Tide. The last game to talk about is USC versus Kansas. And you've got to give the Mobleys credit. I thought Drake would be able to shut down Evan Mobley like they did Tyson Etienne. I know they're different players, but Etienne was the best shocker. Mobley was the best Trojan. I thought the same philosophy could hold. It didn't. USC destroyed Drake in the second half. Their defense was insane. Outside of Joseph Yusufu, no Bulldog scored more than 6 points. If they're going to beat Kansas, Evan Mobley needs to be the best player on the floor. All due respect to Isaiah Mobley, and Drew Peterson too, because he had a really good game also. And I'll throw in Taj Edey also. He almost had a double-double. 9 points, 10 assists. 6 rebounds too, for whatever it's worth. For a point guard, that's pretty impressive. It's got to be Evan Mobley. I mean, Mobley made a pretty strong case that he's better than Cunningham. He took over his game. Cunningham didn't. And I read a lot into what these prospects do in March Madness. This mimics the NBA atmosphere pretty well. The lights are on bright. The entire sports world is watching. What are you going to do? Evan Mobley rose to the occasion. If he dominates tomorrow, USC has a great chance of winning. But I do think Kansas is the deeper team. I've defended Kansas a lot. The biggest thing for them is to just clamp down on defense. You can't allow Eastern Washington to put up 84 points. The Eagles shot 50% from the field, 38% from beyond the arc. They were up by 8 at the half. Kansas turned it on second half. Give them full credit. That's another thing. They can't wait until their backs are against the wall to turn it on. That's not going to work against this USC team. It can work against an inferior EWU team. Not against USC. But again, I do think the Jayhawks are better. Okai Agbaji, David McCormick, maybe Jalen Wilson, assuming he plays, and Marcus Garrett can go off. This is a really good Kansas team. Bill Self is a great coach. Obviously, I love the history. I gotta go with the Jayhawks. Until Tuesday for my NFL free agency recap, I am Jacob Valk saying that I look at baseball players the same way that I look at restaurants. I love the expensive ones and despise the overpriced ones.